of the birth in the state archives, and he wants to use that. And then he goes on to quote him, "It was actually written, I am told. That is what our investigation is showing. It actually exists in this archives, written down." Well, he's not talking about a birth certificate.
No, he's not. And see, if the grandparents went in and registered the birth, it would have triggered several things. There might have been a notation in a ledger, which is what this sounds like Abercrombie is saying, within the State Department of Health in Hawaii. It would have triggered the birth announcements in the newspaper. But what the astounding thing about this interview, and why I picked it up, and this article's gotten so much attention.
Yeah, it's covered in the American Thinker. It's covered in New York, in the Daily News, and covered lots of other places. That you started off this bit of a firestorm.
I created a firestorm with this article. It's because Abercrombie came on with this bombast. I'm going to prove I'm the governor. I'll search the records. I'll investigate. I'll prove Obama was born here. And he doesn't come up with a long-form hospital-generated birth certificate. If he's the governor, he has all this authority, then produce that document, call up Obama and say, I want to release it to the public.
Well, yeah, I had to, about a year and a half ago, go to Italy to get married, and part of that is getting married in Italy is a huge regulatory thing, and you need in some cases, your long-form birth certificate. And I called back to New York City where I was born, or at least I think I was born, and it took me a little bit, but it wasn't that hard. And you got it. The mayor of New York City or the governor of New York had said, hey, get Bonnie Will's birth certificate. It would have taken about 2 minutes. And so what's going on with this month-long investigation and his quotes about this is how our investigation is showing. I mean, how long does it take?
Well, and besides, if that's all that they can find is a notation in some kind of an archive of Barack Obama's birth, it proves nothing, because as I've maintained all along, the grandparents came in and registered this birth. The announcement in the papers, the newspaper, have an address that is the grandparents' address.
Right.
And, this is not the address where Ann Dunham lived. At that time, she was preparing for, or was already gone to, Seattle. And Barack Obama Sr. did not live at that address ever.
Now, the title of your headline is Hawaiian Governor Can't Find Birth Certificate. And now, he didn't actually say that per se. It's the conclusion you take from the context of the fact that he's, in his entire statements, you take from the parenthetical, he said there's a recording of the birth certificate, and he wants to use that. It's the implication that since he's not talking about a birth certificate, there must not be one.
Right, and I'm also pushing and challenging it. I mean, this article now has been linked on Drudge. It's been getting 50,000 hits an hour.
Wow.
Which means 1,000 hits a minute. This is the third day it's been up. If Hawaii wants to challenge what I've printed, why don't they just refute it or show the long-form birth certificate? Why doesn't Barack Obama call up Hawaii and say, I want to prove Dr. Corsi wrong? Let's release the long-form hospital-generated birth certificate.
Jerry, can I hold you through the break? This is a great topic. We're going to go to the traffic right now. Susan Thielen. All right, we're back on the air. Bonnie Will in for Boyles. Hopefully Peter will be back tomorrow. He's still recovering. It's been a tough grind, but Peter's a tough guy, and he's fighting it through, and we hope we'll have him back tomorrow. On with us is Dr. Jerry Corsi, a morning show favorite. He's been on Peter lots of times. He's broken a big story that's catching a lot of attention throughout the internet and otherwise about the headline is Hawaii Governor Can't Find Obama Birth Certificate. I think that's caught a lot of people's eyes. It went on Drudge and it's gone viral. Welcome back to the show, Doctor.
Good to be back with you. Thank you.
It was interesting. Did you see the New York Daily News variation of your story?
Yes, I did. In fact, the New York Daily News largely just report. I'm just going back and forth during the break with WorldNet Daily about that story. We're probably going to come out with something on it tomorrow. They just basically regurgitated what the Star Advertiser had said.
Right, but the headline was amazing because their headline was "Record of President Obama's birth in '61 is in the archives," says Governor Neil Abercrombie.
It's again the spin. It's so clear that the mainstream media is trying to perpetuate. I think this is going to be regarded, looking back, as one of the biggest cover-ups in American history. We don't have Barack Obama's passport records. We don't have his travel records. We don't have his school records. We don't have his medical records.
Right.
We don't have his law.
We don't have anything of his for about 30 years.
Documentation of Barack Obama.
Right.
And the mainstream media covers up for it and accuses anybody of being racist if you ask to see it.
Well, I can tell Peter is a good friend, but he also publishes a column for my paper, the Glendale Cherry Creek Chronicle, and he did a column entitled "I'm a Birther, You're a Birther, Everybody Should Be a Birther," or something to that effect. And we had a picture of the long-form birth certificate of a person just after Obama's birth.
The Nordike twins.
Yeah,
right?
the famous Korsak twins, and also Nordike, and also a computer-generated birth certificate or live birth certification that was put out by the campaign. And we never got more phone calls, emails, just screaming and yelling and going to the advertisers. We have never had anything close to that big a negative reaction to a story. And all we did was put the two up there. And it's basically what Chris Matthews did. We did it about a year ago, but it is amazing how, in the law, and I'm also a lawyer, they say if you have the law with you, do the law. If you have the facts, do the facts. If you have neither, just jump up and down and scream and pound on the table. And that seems to be the reaction to all of this.
Well, ad hominem attacks seem to be the favorite tactic of Obama supporters. And again, it's a Saul Alinsky tactic when you can't win by argument, ridicule your opponent. And I've maintained, I've done this for a long time, an investigative reporter. When I was reporting about George W. Bush and the North American Union, the Security and Prosperity Partnership, I was excoriated by the Bush supporters, so I'm used to it. I get
you've gotten used to it. Okay.
And what you come to realize, an investigative reporter, is if this is all that the Obama supporters have, in other words, if they can only call you names, they've lost. And in fact, their vitriol and the intensity of their response indicates that they know they've lost. They've gotten desperate and angry and furious. They just sputter at the mouth for a while.
That's awful. If you want to give us a call, we're talking about the groundbreaking story that Dr. Jerry Corsi has put together on the Hawaiian governor can't find birth certificate. Give us a call at 303-713-8255. Now, what's interesting, I said before that the story in the Advertiser is verbatim quotes for 99% of this article, except when we get down to this particular question. And then it's in parenthetical where he's summing up, I suppose, what Abercrombie says. And it says, Abercrombie said there's a recording of the birth in the state archives and he wants to use that. Is there any chance you can get a hold of this reporter and ask to hear the tape? Because obviously Abercrombie must have said either it was incoherent or he felt he couldn't quote him or some other reason not to quote him directly.
I've had a lot of experience with the reporters out in Hawaii, and they're very defensive about their work. I had a good relationship with a couple of them over time. But you look, this story, I think this story now has gotten its legs for the moment. I've got other things that I'm developing. I have a book coming out in April and May.
Well, that should be great.
With WND called Where's the Birth Certificate?
Is that going to be in bookstores or online, or how are you going to be able to get a hold of it?
It's going to be everywhere. I mean,
okay.
It's going to be bookstores. It's going to be online. We'll be putting it up on Amazon. I'm sure the Obama supporters, they're just going to go insane when this comes out. And, Amazon's going to be threatened for selling the book, and it's going to be just...
You're going to be like a WikiLeaks kind of person, eh?
Oh, I mean, change my identity, move to Switzerland. Look, the whole thing is, I'm an investigative reporter, and if you're not catching flack, you're probably not at the heart of a story that needs to be covered. And stories that people forget that Bernstein and Woodward, when they did the Watergate story, were at it for 2 years.
Yeah, and they got trashed. I can remember, and that's back in my era, so I can remember the attacks against them that first year.
Oh, the Nixon administration came out against them viciously and against the Washington Post. The same kind of tactics that the Obama supporters are using now. It ended up in Nixon resigning.
Yeah.
And, because I'm pursuing a story against someone on the left, I don't expect to be ever winning any Pulitzer Prizes. I mean, that's kind of a joke. Those are all politically given these days, and I don't care. I'm not sure I'd accept one if it was offered.
Let me ask you about, I'm not sure if you saw the American Thinker also had an article on it.
Yes, I saw that.
And they quoted, the couple relevant ones that regarding the former governor, Lingle. And she said, this is a quote, so I had my health director, who is a physician by background, go personally view the birth certificate in the records of the Department of Health, and we issued news release at the time saying the president was in fact born in Kapoluni Hospital in Honolulu, Hawaii. And then you go back, and they also have the quote from the director of health, Dr. Fukino. Is that how you pronounce the name?
Fukino, yeah.
Fukino. And it was interesting because she doesn't say she saw the birth certificate. I mean, it's a very strange sentence, very quote saying, "I've personally seen and verified that the Hawaiian State Department of Health has Senator Obama's original birth certificate on record in accordance with the state policies and procedures," which is that proviso with state policies and procedures seems to be a qualifier.
It was, and it was intentionally done because all Hawaii's got, I'm convinced, is the statement that the grandparents came in and made that the baby was born.
Right.
After all this controversy, all this time, I mean, for 2 years now, I've been poking my fingers in Obama's eyes virtually, saying, show us the long-form hospital-generated birth certificate. And if we get stonewalling from the White House on this 2 years into it, getting ready for President Obama to run an election committee, going for re-election. And the other thing Abercrombie said, which I think is correct, is that this is an issue which is going to hurt Obama going into 2012 and getting reelected. I don't see how he's going to be reelected if President Obama continues to stonewall and refuses to show records on his nativity story, which I've taken to call it.
Yeah.
And as well as his school records, his travel records, his passport records.
What do you think? Do you think that your story and this interview by the advertiser is going to? I mean, because it really does clarify for a lot of people. Certainly clarified for me that Lingle, Director of Health, never did see the original birth certificate.
And look, before I've reported this in WND. In 2008, I was in Hawaii. I was in Kenya and in Hawaii. And in Hawaii, I had private investigators go to those hospitals. We were paying a lot of money to get records, and we get records out of the hospitals if the hospitals would release them.
Right.
And I'm here to tell you, neither hospital, Kapiolani or Queens, and both have been claimed by Obama and his people to have been the birth hospital at various times, neither hospital has any records of Barack Obama's birth.
Wow.
They don't exist. He
wasn't. Well, who was that? Who was the guy who was on the election board or worked for the election board up in Hawaii?
Tim Adams.
Yeah, Tim Adams. Who said that he searched for it and he couldn't find it, and that once again maybe it's accumulative. Maybe it takes people time to kind of have all this soak in, but more and more, and this seems to be the last straw. I mean, it seems to be clear that a long form birth certificate doesn't appear to exist.
Well, again, if it does, produce it.
Well, that's,
I'm happy to believe that President Obama was born in Hawaii.
Right.
I'm happy to believe that.
Right.
I'm just saying, Ronald Reagan was right. You trust and you verify.
Right.
And if we can't see the verification, there's a lot of things fishy here. And, what about Indonesia? We don't have the records from Indonesia. The one record we do have, the school record, shows that Obama was registered at least 2 years in one of the schools as a Muslim student and an Indonesian citizen.
Yeah.
Now, is that true? Was Obama really an Indonesian citizen? I've got the passport record of Obama's mother. That was released when she changed her passport in Indonesia to remove Barack Obama, her son, from her passport, and indicated that it was because of nationality issues.
Okay.
She put in parentheses Barack Obama's Indonesian surname, Soebarka.
Yeah, well, I've got to go to a hard break, Jerry, but this has been great, and you've been doing a lot of hard work, and I think it's coming to fruition. I think this may be one of the examples of it really starting to break through, because I think all your hard work is starting to bear some fruition, and I'm really looking forward to your book.
Great, thank you very much. Great pleasure and honor to be with you.
Okay, hope I can have you again sometime.
Anytime.
All right, take care.